Kane is in the building.
Hello, and thank you for tuning into another edition of the Buffalo Blueprint podcast here on the Dude Champions Media Network. I am Pat Bruknis. You can find me on Twitter at Pat_Bruknis. And I'm here with my co-host, Jake Steinhart. You can find him on Twitter at JakeFBData. And we're also here with Jordan, a part of the the Dolphins podcast. What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
Doing well, man. I didn't want to step on your guys' toes here, but I appreciate you having me on. We just got done, me and my co-host Brett, recording, talking about this game. And I'm thrilled to come on here and talk with you guys. So thanks for having me.
All right, no problem. Do you want to tell everybody where we can find you, where anybody can find you?
You can find me on X at Selly Sports, and you can find our podcast at the List Fins Pod. That is the List Fins Pod.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Super pumped. Rare early season night game Thursday night, so can't wait to dive into that later. But let's first touch in on the week 1 slate. A lot of interesting games, a lot of interesting storylines. We'll each pick one to talk about, but for me, it's got to be that New England Bengals game. I'm worried about Joe Burrow. I think his wrist is not right. There was videos of him like trying to grab a water bottle and he couldn't even do it. He just was not throwing the ball well. He does not look comfortable in the pocket. Guys were open. He just wasn't throwing it. That New England defense is really good though, so I'm interested to see if it's just a week 1 thing as well. Bengals traditionally don't start out hot either, so that could be part of the problem too. But man, that game was super interesting, and what a big upset for New England.
Yeah, I know. I didn't watch much of that game because Buffalo was playing at the same time, but I went back, I watched some of the film on it, little highlights, whatever you want to call it. And if the Bengals offense continues to look like this in week 4 or 5, then I'm going to be concerned. But at the same time, they are slow starters. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I look at the Bengals and what they did in that game, and you got to worry about Joe Burrow. You got to worry about the distractions. I mean, you also got to worry about Zach Taylor. I think that he's now – I think the stat is 1-10 in weeks 1 and 2 over his course as head coach. I mean, that is just lack of preparation and inability to get your team ready to play early in seasons.
That's a great point. I also worry about like Mixon being gone. Like he really brought a level of physicality to that team, and really they relied on him just pounding the rock and then play action. And that offensive line is not very good in pass pro to begin with. So having that run game cooking, then they could do some play action off it. So I'm worried about them. I think their defense gives them a certain floor. With Lou Anarumo, I really like him. But man, if you're losing to New England and teams like that in this AFC, you're going to be struggling.
And I think there were a lot of teams that had trouble in week 1. The Bills being one of them, the Dolphins being one of them.
For sure.
But I think the difference between what our teams did and what the Bengals did is we found a way to win.
Right.
And the Bengals couldn't do that at home week 1. And that's definitely worrisome. And I think that to me, it's more of we're worried about the Bengals more so than do the Patriots really have something.
Right. No, that's a great point. And I think
that's a great point.
In both our games, it was a tale of two halves, right? And it was, offenses making plays, defense coming back and making plays. And really you could see that, both teams have life. It just started out a little sloppy. But you didn't see that in that Bengals game, even with New England. I mean, it's not like they played particularly great either. So, that game was super worrisome for me. Pat, what about you? What was your week 1 game?
Mine was the Jets and 49ers. I mean, Jets fans on Twitter were saying Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and look like 2018 Aaron Rodgers. And I know he didn't play in the preseason. It's his first time taking a snap in 400 days, 500, something like that. And they did not look good. As soon as the 49ers defense keyed in on Garrett Wilson and they were stopping the run, Rodgers really had nowhere to go. And that Super Bowl defense, as the Jets fans like to call it, was getting gashed left and right.
Yeah, I think that was the most surprising part for me was, uh, that D line was getting dominated by the 49ers O line. That's like not particularly great outside of Trent Williams. Um, they rely more on scheme and CMC, being awesome, and he didn't even play, and they were still getting destroyed on the ground. So that was super shocking. And man, as far as Rodgers, like I'm worried, man. He can't move. He could
No,
not
he can't
move.
move at all.
His
He
arm
has like
was
no mobility.
fine, but yeah, he can't move. And so that O line was not very good. And as soon as pressure
Mm-mm.
got on him, he was panicking and just trying to get rid of the ball. What do you think, Jordan?
I don't know if you guys saw the throw chart from Rodgers in the game.
Yeah.
But literally every single throw was from center field to the left.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that shows to what you say that he couldn't really move his body.
Yep.
To me, I think that across the board, when you look at the entire league, offense struggled. So you can look at what the Jets did and say, okay, maybe their offense needs a couple weeks. Maybe Rodgers needs to get back in the swing of things. They have a really good run game. They'll be able to score some points. The run defense is what really worries me. I said to Brett on our show a little bit earlier tonight, I said a staple of being even an average NFL team is you have to be able to just not get gashed on the ground. If you're a team that continuously gets punched in the mouth, that's a recipe for having a bad season. And the Jets showed a lot of those qualities of a team that is not going to have the ability to stop the run. You could tell that they lost some pieces on that defense. He's not going to help the run, but you really miss Hassan Reddick, and they need to figure something out there. But the Jets really, they showed signs of a team that is really going to underachieve this season. And they also look like a team, as we talk about a team like the Patriots, but I think the Jets or the Patriots are a very bad matchup for the Jets because of the way the Patriots like to pound the football.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, as far as offense is struggling, I mean, yeah, the pass game specifically, right? I mean, it was like the fewest passing touchdowns in that we've seen in like
Yeah.
almost 10 years. Total yards was way down passing. Conversely, the running game was up. And so teams were running better, and that was a trend that started last year as well. We've kind of seen it go from a spread offenses and throw it everywhere. Now we're transitioning more to running and being more run efficient, which then leads to passing. So that's a great point. If the Jets are struggling to stop the run, I mean, it's going to be a long year because that's what teams are going to do to them, and like that's what teams want to do to begin with, especially in our division, right? All three of our teams
Yeah.
want to start
Yep.
running the ball.
Yes. Yes, for sure. I went. You guys took the easy AFC East.
We're the hosts, man. That's what we're supposed to do.
Right.
So I was down to two. I'll tell you the one I didn't pick, and that was the Detroit Rams game because I love the way Matthew Stafford played in that game. But to be a little more AFC centric, I picked the Steelers Falcons game.
Okay.
And I'm wondering as to whether the Steelers defense is that good,
Yeah.
or if Atlanta is going to have that many problems on the offensive side of the football because the Steelers really shut them down in the second half of that game.
Yeah.
And in a year where a lot of people love the Ravens, I was very high in the Bengals prior to Sunday. If the Steelers can do what the Steelers do and kind of play physical smash mouth football in a year that we just all said smash mouth football is kind of going to be the theme of the year. And if the Steelers could really make some noise, they have two good running backs. If either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields could play efficient football, the Steelers could go in and beat anybody.
Yeah, that's a great point. I kind of wonder on Atlanta too. I was really high on them. I can't remember where I had them on our first power ranking, but they were way up there for me. Kirk Cousins is done, man. I watched that game. I went back and watched every snap of his, and he's toast, man. Like he can't move. We talked about Rodgers not being able to move. Like at least Rodgers could plant and throw the ball. Like Cousins does not look comfortable planting and throwing the ball. He was not very accurate. He looked panicked. He was cutting his drop short, so it was supposed to be like a 5 or 7 step drop, and he was cutting it a step short. Especially later in that game when that pass rush started affecting him. So I'm really worried about Atlanta. I'm a big believer in Tomlin though for the Steelers. I think he gives them such a high floor, and so does that defense. And I think you make a great point, right? If Cincy's offense is struggling, if Baltimore has the offensive line struggles like they had against Kansas City, like Pittsburgh already plays them really tough. Like if Pittsburgh can come out of that division with 4 or 5 wins. We didn't even talk about the Browns and how terrible they looked. Like, the Steelers could be there again when we were talking before the season that this was supposed to be like their worst year in a sub 500 year. So I think that's a great point for that matchup.
Both of you guys bring up a good point about Kirk Cousins. Now, Sam Darnold looked good on Sunday against the Giants. Sure, it was against the Giants, but did Kirk Cousins have a lot of success because of the offensive scheme in Minnesota? Because we just saw Sam Darnold look pretty good too.
I think, and I said it to Brett tonight, I think Kevin O'Connell is a excellent offensive coach.
I agree.
I think he is extremely underrated. Yep. And I think that you're going to see Sam Darnold be put in positions that he can be successful. And that just speaks to the offensive brilliance of Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think also those weapons are really nice too, as far as anytime you can have Justin Jefferson. I know Atlanta's got weapons, but they don't have Justin Jefferson. I like Drake London, but he's nowhere near that where you can just throw anything up and he's gonna come down with it, or he's always open. And Jordan Addison's really good too. And then when Hawkinson comes back, so I agree. I think that's a great point. I think Minnesota is gonna do well and probably compete for wild card. We'll touch on it in the power rankings, but I think they're definitely gonna be higher than they were last week. All right. Well, speaking of that, should we get into reverse power ranking?
Yes, we'll
start NFC first since this is an AFC show. I'll name the team and where they are ranked, and then you guys decide if it belongs there or if we should move the order around at all. Okay. We'll start at 16. I have Carolina, man. Are they going to win a game? I know they play the Giants, but that was brutal, and it wasn't even against a good team. I don't think New Orleans is very good, and so, wow.
Derek Carr looked like an MVP against that defense. And I mean, what they put up 48 or 49 on you in week 1,
I believe it was.
Yeah,
47. I mean,
I do not like Derek Carr.
You went Price is Right rules and went 1.
Right.
All right, 15. I got the Giants. Talk about another team that looked just absolutely awful and lost. I mean, is Daniel Jones cooked?
I mean, and I'll use this as a moment to plug. I don't think what that fan did outside the stadium was right at all.
Yeah.
I think that no matter how bad these guys are playing at the time, and no matter how we're going to talk about their football player or whatever, to go up to a guy as he's leaving his job and start yelling at him. Yeah. I mean, go home, man.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Giants and it comes to the Panthers, those are the two worst teams probably in football right now.
Yeah.
Sure. And they were definitely the two worst teams in week 1. Daniel Jones, that was one of the big surprises for me that they didn't add a quarterback, somebody really that could go in and actually compete. I definitely thought that they were going to be a team that took one high. They chose not to, but it looks like this is going to be Daniel Jones' last season as starter, and we know that already after week 1.
Yeah, that's a great point. Did you see the quote by Myles Garrett about fans booing and heckling?
What did he say?
He had a great one. I loved it. He said, this was in the stadium versus out of the stadium, right? He said, "You're paying money to come in and watch us. Like you're entitled to your opinion. If you want to boo us and yell at us, that's fine. You can totally do that. And if you want to cheer us when we're doing great, that's your your right as well." I thought that was a really good take. Now, when you step outside of the stadium, or you start messaging people on social media or sending them letters and stuff, that way crosses the line. But if you're paying in the stadium, I totally agree with them. You can boo all you want, but don't wait outside the parking lot. Like that is stalker level.
Yeah, no, that's
crazy.
weird. Yeah,
like I'm the type of guy. I love going to a game. I love making some noise. I'll yell. I'll heckle. We'll be there. We'll talk back and forth. But I think that's all in the spirit of sport and fun and competitiveness. And at the end of the day, you dap up, you hug, you go your separate ways. And it was just part of the good fun of the game. I went up a couple years ago to the Dolphins-Bills playoff game when Skylar Thompson was starting up in Buffalo. And I'll say until the Dolphins recovered the fumble for a touchdown to take the lead late in the third quarter of the game, it was all good fun. Everybody was having a fun time. The second the Dolphins took a lead and it looks like Buffalo might lose to Skylar Thompson, then I was told, no. You gotta, like the Jonah Hill meme, you gotta kind
of yeah. That's great. I've been to probably at least 10 Bills Dolphins games in Miami, as I told you before the show. That's where I grew up down there, and so that rivalry was amazing. When we were kids growing up. So I'm glad you got to see it in Buffalo. Hopefully they weren't too mean to you. So
no, not at all. Actually, some guy gave us pizza outside the stadium.
Nice.
Some brick oven pizza.
Yeah.
The brick oven pizza.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
Good. All right, so we're on 14. We've only made it to 14. I got Washington at 14. They're going to go as Jaden Daniels goes. I did not like his passing performance. It was pretty awful. I went back and had to watch some of it just because I couldn't believe that it was that bad from what people were saying. And everybody was open and he just would not throw the ball. So I don't know what was going on. His running though gives them, that offense, a nice floor, but yeah, he's got to get better as a passer if they're going to win some games. Cause I don't think that defense is going to be very good. They have a lot of new pieces. It might come together throughout the year, but I don't have a lot of faith in Dan Quinn either to make adjustments and turn it around. So I got them at 14, unless you guys have somebody else.
I think that's pretty good.
All right, 13. I got Atlanta at 13. That offense, man. Kirk Cousins, I'm worried. We'll see. Their defense is supposed to be good. They did hold the Steelers to 6 field goals, which is just crazy. It's such a Steelers scoring line. But yeah, I have them at 13, unless you guys have somebody else.
No, I think that this is definitely that next tier. And it's, I think we're getting kind of into a range where almost the rest of these teams, until you get to the top teams in the NFC, any of these teams could beat any of these other teams.
Right.
I think that the two that can't are the Panthers and Giants.
Yeah.
And just because a team is 14, 13, 12, 11, 10 in this range, those are still all going to be winnable games for those teams. And we'll do a lot of juggling throughout the season.
That's a great point. And these are like how we feel right now, right? So even, taking injuries into account and whatever, this will be dynamic. You got anything to add, Pat?
No, I think you both guys hit the nail on the head with that one.
Okay. 12, I got Minnesota.
I think you could flop Minnesota and even a team like the Bears right there.
Yeah.
I think that Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell looked a little more competent offensively than what I saw from Chicago. And
my only worry with Minnesota though is their defense, not playing bad quarterbacks, right?
Okay.
Like you know their defensive coordinator, right? Better than I do, but
he who shall not be named,
right? And he's great at exploiting bad quarterbacks, right? Like if you can't handle the blitz. If you're not confident, like he is gonna destroy you. And so I worry about that defense though when they start playing, Detroit, and I think they'll do fine against Chicago, but I worry about them when Jordan Love's healthy and some of the other teams in the NFC. So that's my only worry with Minnesota.
Very fair.
But you could flip them for sure. Even with the next team, I have New Orleans at 11. I think it was a lot of who they played. I think their defense is going to be pretty solid. They're at home, though. They're a much different team at home. And I just don't trust Derek Carr, man, especially when you get outside and you get some pressure on him. So I have them at 11, and then I have Chicago at 10. So like you said, that 12, 11, 10 could all be flipped around. Hey, Caleb Williams looked awful. I mean, awful. You can't look too much worse as a quarterback in your debut. So, you can argue back all you want, but until
No, you're right. He didn't trust his eyes at all. He didn't
terrible.
No, he didn't look it at all.
Yeah, and so Yeah, I until he gets better, I don't believe it. I mean, they won without any offensive points, right? They had a field
Must be
goal.
nice, right?
Right, right.
Must be
So
some
that
nice.
was like the Dolphins from a couple years ago. Remember when they made those runs with all defensive and special
Uh
teams
huh.
touchdowns?
Uh huh.
Hey, a win's a win though. So
It's a tough league to win.
right, for
Yes, it
sure,
is.
sure. So that's why I got them at 10 because they found a way to win, right? And you can't play worse on offense. So
No, you can't.
I think
um,
New Orleans and Minnesota are both in that. Let's see how they do next week.
right,
Right.
Let's
right.
I
okay.
agree.
You passed test number 1 against an FCS team. Let's see how you do when you play somebody else.
Ouch, but I agree. I mean, they did play the 16th and 15th team, so I have
Worst two
Green
teams
Bay
in the NFL.
next. I only have Green Bay at 9 because of Jordan Love missing for a couple weeks. We're doing the rankings as of today, right? I I mean Willis starting, that's scary. I have a lot of faith in Matt LaFleur and that run game. I think that defense will keep him in games, but he worries me, man. They have a lot of weapons, right? You don't need him to do too much, but I would almost feel better with Sean Clifford starting than Willis. So I have him at 9, unless you guys have any other arguments.
When we're factoring in Jordan Love not playing, I mean, there's an argument they could be below Atlanta. I
Yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
haven't seen it, right? So
right?
that's
Yeah.
that's why I have him there. I mean, I think they're a top 4 or 5 team in the NFC when he's healthy. So
Yes.
Oh,
um,
yeah, they are.
I have Arizona at 8. Um, I think they're going to be a lot better than people think. That offense, I think, is going to be top 10. It's just
Offense is good.
what they can do on defense. It's what Gannon can scheme up and how much they can get out of that unit. If they can do enough, force some turnovers, that offense is going to score plenty to be with anyone. I think this is a big week for them. They got the Rams, and the Rams are on like their sixth, seventh, and eighth, offensive linemen. They're signing guys off the street. Um, Arizona
Oh
had the
boy.
worst pass rush in the league against us in week 1, so they got to figure that out. But if they can beat the Rams, that would be huge, or even just really look competitive. But I have them at 8.
Yeah. I
All
mean,
right,
if
I got Seattle at 7. I don't know what to make of Seattle. They played Denver, which I think is a terrible team. They struggled. They didn't look great. So I have Seattle at 7 because I don't know where else to put them.
So I'm
they're
actually very high on Seattle. I actually on mine and Brett's preseason show, I actually picked them to both win the NFC West and to
Wow.
make the NFC Championship game. Even
Wow.
though I had
wow.
them losing to Detroit in that game. But I think that they have a lot of qualities that make up a really good football team. I
For
think
sure.
Mike McDonald is a
Yep.
great football coach, a great
Yep.
defensive mind. And I think if Gino can be what Gino was last year with those pieces they have, with the offensive line they've added to, with another year in that Mike McDonald scheme, I think Seattle's going to get back to those days of being a top-notch contender. I'm very confident in them,
Okay.
but I totally understand number 7 after week 1 against Denver.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I like Mike McDonald a lot. I think he's going to be one of the better defensive minds, in
Yeah.
the NFL for a long time. Where I worry about them is Gino. You look at his splits last year, and he catches fire and plays great for a couple of games, and then he's terrible. The second half of last year, he was awful.
Yeah.
So I just worry about that. They're going to go as Gino goes. That O line, I think, is going to be very good. And they're going to run the ball. And if Walker can stay healthy, and that defense, keeps getting better, I think you're right. They're going to surprise people and win a lot of games, especially, at home field where it's very tough. And then they traditionally play the West tough too. So I agree with you. I just feel like after week 1, I don't feel better about them than I felt with them last week. If anything, I feel worse. But hey, next week they could move on up. So
They could. They
um,
could.
I have the Rams slightly ahead of them at 6, but if they play terrible with their offensive line against a terrible Cardinals defensive line, then I have some real concerns. Detroit lit them up, but again, Detroit's D line is legit. You have Puka out as well, so that kind of worries me. But I have a lot of faith in Sean McVay, and I kind of like their backup guys, Tyler Johnson and Whittington. So I think they'll be fine. And obviously, they're just gonna spam Cup every freaking throw. So
Yeah.
I have
they're
them
gonna
at 6 for that, but you could flip Seattle, and I wouldn't argue
right.
too
You could
much
because I
with
mean,
you
due to all the injuries on the offensive line and Puka.
for sure. Um, I got Tampa Bay at 5. I don't know how they go too much higher because I really like all 4 of the teams above them. But
Right.
Baker, man, if he plays like that week in and week out, they're gonna be there, man. They're gonna be really tough out. That defense is playing good, and I honestly think having Dave Canales leave was probably the best thing for that team because I don't think he's a very good offensive coordinator. I didn't think so last year, and him being gone is like a net positive. So, um,
Bryce Young didn't prove you wrong there.
yeah, right, right, exactly. Whew,
Oof.
tough. I got Dallas at 4. Um, I don't know what to make of Cleveland, so I don't know how much credit to give Dallas, but they went into Cleveland and they won, very convincing fashion, right? Offense looked
Yeah.
really, really good against a
Really good.
good defense. So I have them at 4. I would have them higher, but I just like all the teams ahead of them better. So I have Detroit at 3. Um, I have Philly at 2, and then San Francisco at 1. I think you could argue those top 3 however you want, but until proven otherwise, that's kind of how I have that stacked.
I like it.
I think you're pretty spot on.
All right, AFC. I think the worst team in the AFC could probably beat the bottom 4 teams pretty easily. I have the Raiders as my 16 team. I just don't think Pierce is a very good head coach. I like him as a person. I liked him as a player, but boy did he make some really bad strategic calls. And that team has razor thin margin to find victories. That defense did not look good against the Chargers. I'm sorry, Kevin. I know
Jake, we're gonna
that's
have to
your
stop you
team.
there. Kevin is a Raiders fan.
I know, and he can happily come on the show and talk about why he thinks the Raiders are not the worst team. Yes, that was one of the worst. That was the worst punt call since Rex Ryan in Buffalo.
Ooh.
So
Mm.
yeah, Kevin, if you can convince me otherwise, but I have him at 16. But again, I think the bottom 3 or 4 could all be flip flopped. I have Tennessee at 15. Um, like I said last week, I'm really, really concerned about that offensive scheme. Um, I don't think it's a good fit. Um, and yeah, without good quarterback play, I think they're going to be sunk. So I
I
have
just
them at
wonder
15.
if Will Levis was just struggling because Chicago does have a good defense.
Right, and I don't disagree with you, but it kind of confirmed everything I thought about that
Right.
offense. They
Right.
want it to be rhythm and timing, and he's not a rhythm and timing thrower.
Right. He's
He
not.
likes havoc and to go deep. He's got a little, sugar high Josh in him.
He
And
does.
without those boomer bust plays, I just don't know how that offense. He's a lot like Richardson to me as well. They're going to live off the success of big plays, and without the big plays, they're going to struggle. And that offense just does not have big plays built into it. So I have them at 15, unless you guys say otherwise.
I don't think you're pretty good right there.
I got Denver at 14. I don't think they're any better, but you got to order them somehow. So this is like you said in the NFC, that bottom tier. I think you could match these up any way you want. Bo Nix had one of the worst rookie starts as well. I mean, you could try to say he was good, but he had like 40 attempts and he only threw for like 100 yards or a little more than 100 yards. So
Yeah.
uh, I thought it was terrible. I don't have much faith in that defense either. So we'll see. But yeah, I have them at 14.
I think you nailed the bottom tier. The only team I would probably make an argument to switch in and out is Tennessee with a team like Cleveland. I have a little more faith in Tennessee. I think that they looked good early in the game and then gave the game away quite literally.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think that this weekend, the Tennessee Jet game, I think one of those teams will feel a little more comfortable about going into next week. And
Yeah.
one of those teams will be in real panic mode already.
No, that's a fantastic
Oh,
point because
yeah.
I have the Jets ranked probably higher than a lot of people right now because of who they played, right? On the road at night, against this, a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, right? So it's hard to judge, how bad things really are. Plus, it's week 1. If they
Yeah.
struggle against Tennessee, man, yeah, I think you're right, right? I think they're
Hit
going to
the
go way
hit the
down.
red button. Start panicking and
Yes.
Jersey.
Right. Right.
for sure.
All right. So I have the Chargers at 13. Um, they were well coached. They played well. They ran the ball well.
Good rushing
I
attack.
don't
Yeah.
know how sustainable it is, though. I don't know how good that Raiders run defense is. Yeah, I'm smashing on the Raiders again, Kevin. I'm sorry. We'll
Ooh.
see. I don't love their offensive weapons, obviously. And I'm not a big Greg Roman fan, but if they can be efficient on the ground and then let Herbert just kind of dink and dunk and make plays here and there, that it's got a nice floor to it. That offensive line played better, a lot better than I thought. Their rookies looked really good, so that's encouraging. So yeah, I have them at 13 until I can see them beat up on a better team.
2 long runs was misleading for the
Right, I
Chargers.
agree with you. It's J.K. Dobbins being boomer bust, but that's what they need, right? If their passing game isn't creating explosives, then their running game has. It's kind of like Brees Hall with the Jets. Like he's kind of a boomer bust running back as well, but when he breaks one off, it's massive and it flips the game and,
Yeah.
and equates to points. Or A Chain with the Miami, right? Like you need those explosives, and they really change your whole offense. When you're not getting them in the run game, at least Miami can rely on the pass game where I don't think the Chargers can right now. So I have them at 13 mainly because the next 5 teams I don't know what to make of them. I think this is kind of the start of that next tier. I have Cincinnati at 12. I don't know if it's week 1 like you said. I don't know if it's just them starting out slow like they do in the beginning of the season. I can't really rank them higher because they lost to New England team that was 16 on our rankings last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have them at 12. I have New England at 11 because I don't know where else to put them, and they beat Cincinnati, who I thought was supposed to be a good team. They played a lot better than I thought they would on offense. I didn't know how that O line was going to look, and Ramondre was going to run behind it, but he made that O line look a lot better. And then Brissett, didn't make a lot of mistakes. He went, to the right spot with the ball, and that's all you can ask of him. I know you've seen him too much for your liking, I'm sure, Jordan. Maybe brings back nightmares, but he at least plays smart football and protects the ball. And when you have that defense and a run game, like we said, earlier, that gives you a floor. So I have them at 11. I have the Browns at 10. I don't know what to do with them either, man. Like they won a bunch of games last year with horrible quarterback play, and then they had mediocre quarterback play as well. So I don't know. Like, was that just a fluke? Was the Dallas just had their number and was lighting them up? It was week 1, so I don't know what to make of them. So I have them at 10. I have the Steelers at 9. Uh, are they going to get enough out of the offense to win enough games? That defense is going to give them a nice floor. The teams ahead of them, though, I'm worried that are going to score more than they can defend, essentially, and that's why I don't have the Steelers higher. But at 9, they're flirting with a wild card. I have the Jets at 8. Um, I'm worried, but again, they did play a very good team on the road,
They did.
and it's week 1 as well. So if they can get enough from that offense and Rogers, maybe Brees breaks a run or a screen pass or something, Rogers can hit a deep ball or something, then they score enough and they can win some games. Um, I have Jacksonville at 7. You can get more into them later, Jordan, and tell us how they looked, but I have them at 7. I think they're a solid team. I think they're going to win plenty of games. I just don't think they're that great. Trevor Lawrence, to me, just he makes too many bad decisions and misses too many
Yeah.
throws in critical moments that you have to make. Now he makes some unbelievable throws uh, that are just ridiculous, but you got to consistently do it to be one of
Especially
those
against
top
us.
teams. Yeah, yeah, he does it against. We did it against Miami.
Especially.
Throws
Yeah.
against Miami that were unreal, but
Yeah.
again, you got to consistently do it to win games, and you saw it. He got hot early, and then it was nothing in the second half. So
Right.
I
You
have them
can't
at
pull off like
7.
that.
I got Indy at 6. Like we talked about last week, they're boomer bust. They go as AR goes, man. He looked good enough, right?
Yeah,
He
he did.
he completed the big plays. He missed AD Mitchell on probably 3 big plays. 2 of them probably were touchdowns. So again, if they can hit on a couple of those, run the ball, and I think that defense is going to surprise some people. They're going to be right there as well. But again, I don't like putting them any higher because I just can't trust that AR is going to stay healthy.
Yeah, he
Um,
needs to start sliding, man.
right,
There's a few times last
right. No, he
last week
lowered his
where he's just
shoulder on
taking.
that
Yeah,
one,
he's
and I'm
lowering his
like, "What are
shoulder.
you doing, man?"
That's what people think Josh Allen does.
Right. He jumps
No.
over him and then hurts
Yeah,
himself.
no, right.
I got this is where it gets spicy. I got Buffalo at 5.
Wow. Okay, so I was waiting for the moment to
Yeah.
see if you were going to put Buffalo or Miami higher.
Yeah, so I got Buffalo right now. I think a lot of that is of the state of the team right now. So arguably our two best defenders are most impactful, hardest to replace. Are out, Milano and Taron Johnson. So that kind of hinders or lowers my confidence in the defense. Especially they're playmakers too. It's not like they're just good players. Like they
Right.
turn the ball over, they make splash plays. So them being out scares me a little. And then also against Miami, you would like to have both those players as key
At least one of
pieces
them.
in the pass coverage, especially though. I'd like to have,
Yeah.
both of them are key. So that's why I have them at 5. I got Miami at 4. I think Miami's a good team. The O line played a lot better than I thought from what I saw. You can touch on more of that later and go in depth. So as long as that O line stays good, I think that team's going to be good. They didn't run the ball as well as I thought. You can kind of get into that, Jordan, later as well on some of the issues there. But yeah, I have Miami at 4. I got Baltimore at 3. I think they have their own issues too. Their O line, I'm not sure how good it's going to be, especially in pass protection. Lamar again, make him sit in the pocket and throw, and you're not super impressed. So we'll see about that. I think their defense is going to be pretty good though, and all around they're going to be a solid team. They're going to win plenty of games with the style of play that they have. I got Houston at 2. Um, I'm not sure if Houston's that good. We'll see. But they played a good game, and they made the plays to win. And Stroud again made some really good throws. Nico Collins is so good, man. And then, the other weapons they have,
You want to talk about him?
we will not talk about. No, I don't really want to.
2
talk
touchdowns,
about him.
man. He said he didn't forget how to play football.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I watched.
33 yards with 2 tutties.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, though.
That's what he was doing
really,
in Buffalo too, minus the touchdowns. The 33 yards is pretty spot on.
Right.
From last year.
Exactly. So, but if that's all they want to use him as, is short yardage, quick game, that's fine. They got
So wait, you guys are fans of Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got Houston at 2. I want to see what that defense can do. Like I said, they had a lot of blown coverages in that game. I felt like the Colts probably should have won that game. So we'll see. But again, we don't know how good the Colts are either. So, and it's week 1, so the defense could get better. I got obviously Kansas City at number 1. They're going to stay there until someone knocks them off. But they definitely didn't look any worse this year. So
No, they didn't.
that is the reverse power rankings. Woohoo! All right,
Nice job,
let's
Jake.
get into it. The first topic I want to touch on was the Spencer Brown deal. The details finally came out. It was 4 years, 72 million, 19.8, essentially fully guaranteed. It really breaks down into a 2-year, $27.2 million deal. And then after that, it's kind of pay as you go. So 2026, 2027, 2028. Cap hits
Isn't there void years too?
There was one void year on the back.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
So the cap hits are 2.5 million this year, which lowers his cap hit by 800,000, which is always nice. Next year is only 8.2 million, which I think is really good. And then this gets into where they have options. So year 3 is 19.48 million. If they decide to go a different route, the dead cap's only 3.84 million, so they'd save almost $16 million. I do think if he plays well this year and next year, they'll just restructure or change that deal completely. So I think that's where I really like this deal. Where it's nice for Spencer Brown is the AAV of the deal. It's about $19 million per year, and that's really nice. It puts him as, I think, top 7, top 8 for right tackles. But again, like I said, with such low cap hits the first 2 years, it really helps Buffalo out.
It's another good contract by Brandon Bean.
Yeah, I think so. I think it buys the Bills, 2 more years to evaluate him. He's played such a few amount of snaps. Last year was his breakout. So yeah, if he keeps playing really well, it's going to look like a fantastic contract.
Just like
and then again, if he doesn't, the first 2 years are low cap hits and then get out of it. He looked
Right.
really good week one.
He did. Yes.
So I think it's going to end up being a great contract.
And it keeps the Bills' young offensive line together for at least 2 more
That's a
years as
great
well.
point. Yep. Their
And
tackles are signed in, and then also his running mate next to him, Torrance. They got
still
him
on his
locked
rookie
up for
contract.
3 more years. Yep,
And
great
then
point.
McGovern's locked up for what, another year or two?
Yep, 2 more years. So, all right, that's it for news I had. We'll recap week one game against Arizona, and then we'll have Jordan recap the Dolphins game against Jacksonville. So for me, the week one game I'll go good on offense first. Um, I thought Josh was super patient. It was really nice to see him not try to get aggressive, not force the ball. He spread the ball around really nicely. You had, I think, 9 different pass catchers. It was really nice. Um, Really encouraging to see Keon's debut. I thought he exceeded all expectations. Looked really good. Had the 4 catches. The one deep ball where he boxed out the defender was really nice to see. And then he drew 2 more flags as well, which was really nice heads up plays. So he also had the most snaps of any wide receiver, which I think was really surprising, and he played well. So that was super encouraging to see that. Um, and then the other good on offense I had was David Edwards was unbelievable in pass protection, really good in run protection, but he gave up no pressures in pass protection. And then both offensive tackles were fantastic, Dawkins and Brown. So that was super encouraging to see. The Bills O line in general was first this week in pass block win rate, and then they were fifth in run block win rate. I think a lot of that has to do with the Cardinals and how bad they are. But again, this is what you should do, right? You should dominate bad fronts. So that was really nice to see. The bad pre-snap penalties, man. Way too many penalties in general, but the pre-snap ones were brutal. You got to cut those out. Josh's turnover was pretty tough. That was classic Josh. Drop back, had a
Yeah.
guy open in the middle, was looking at him, just decided not to throw it. He wanted to get a little greedy, tried to roll out and didn't see the backside defender, and they stripped him. Again, that was in the red zone too. It was the high red zone, right around the 20-yard line, but still, like, those are killers. You cannot do that. Um, I did not like the 75% first down run rate. That is atrocious. That should never happen. Um, that was brutal. Uh, we had 5 total play action passes. I hate that. That's way too low percentage. I want to see that percentage like over 30%. So that was way too low for my liking, especially if you're running 75% on first down. Like, you got to sprinkle some play action in
Yeah,
there.
especially with James Cook alone having 19 carries, not including Ty Johnson and Ray Davis.
For sure.
He easily
And
could
you
have set up the play
saw the
action.
Cardinals completely adjusted that in the second half, and they were run blitzing on first down.
Oh,
In the
yeah, they were.
second half, we had 11 carries for 22 yards. Like, they were just full selling out, and we did not make adjustments. So that was frustrating. On those 5 play action plays, Josh Allen had 25% higher completion percentage than he did on his traditional dropbacks. They also went for 5 more yards per play or per attempt. Sorry, in play action. So not only is it super effective, but we just aren't doing it. So that was super frustrating. I don't know if that was a week one thing, if they were trying to chew clock, but they were down, like, for the majority of that game. So it was a weird game script. But I got to see that flipped. So that's it for me on the bad for offense. You got anything else, Pat, for offense or defense? I mean,
I gotta
sorry, for
stop talking to you
offense.
so much. I gotta stop talking
Yeah.
to you so much because you took everything I wanted to say. I'll try, find out. Okay, an audible again. Let's go with Khalil Shakir, a guy who refuses to go down after the catch.
Yeah, for
We
sure, man.
saw with his touchdown. We
Yeah.
saw it on his first catch of the game as well.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, you'd like to see him get some more manufactured touches, right? It was a weird game script, though. I think a lot of that was, the fact, I think we had, what, 4 or 5 attempts, before the 2 minute warning. I think it was like 4 pass attempts before the 2 minute warning in the
Yeah,
first half. So it was a really weird game script. I think that had a lot to do with the passing game. But yeah, I want to see Shakir get way more touches, especially in a game where they had quadruple teamed Kincaid, right? Like, they had
yeah, they
so
took him right
much
out of the game.
focus on him. Yeah, it was unbelievable. So, I think you want to get your next weapon involved. Samuel, not getting very many touches. He didn't have very many snaps. I think that's probably part of the toe injury coming back from that. You don't want to give him a heavy workload coming off a turf toe. But yeah, I would have liked to see more passing. Their passing success rate was ridiculous that game too, and they just didn't want to go to it. So their dropback EPA was 0.53, which I think was second in the NFL. Where their run EPA was negative 0.153, which was like 20th in the NFL or something. So yeah, I want to see them lean into the pass. They're a pass team. I don't want to abandon the run by any means. I want to see them run the ball, but you got to incorporate play action and some more
You have to.
passing, especially early down passing. They got to break that tendency. So I'm wondering, Brady's a big tendency guy, so I'm wondering if that was part of it. Is spam the run against a bad D line and build that tendency and then break it, in week 2. So we'll see.
And it was
Um,
nice to see Dawson Knox get involved in the game plan. We haven't seen that in almost 2 years
For
as
sure, and
well.
yeah, it's good to see him healthy, and I think he's definitely going to be involved, as a blocker and then as a pass catcher as well. So, for sure, I think that's what's so cool about this offense is they have like 5 or 6 guys that can all go out there and catch passes. I mean, you saw Hollins, with the touchdown catch, and then the other one over the middle. Like,
Yeah,
that was huge. He's taken that Gabe Davis role, as a blocker, and then kind of that he runs those intermediate routes and short routes
yeah,
so much better than Gabe Davis ever could. So that was super encouraging to see too. Now for the bad, um, I'll
yeah.
start with defense. Uh, I don't even know where to start, man. The
Oh,
first
I do.
half was just brutal.
Oof.
Way too many missed tackles. Um, Way too many missed tackles. Sorry, I'll start on defense. No show Ed Oliver again. Like my uncle, diehard Bills fan, his favorite thing to say is Ed Oliver is famous for pitching a shutout. Well, he definitely did that in this game. He was nowhere to be found, and you can't have you can't pay him what he's being made to to do nothing essentially. I'll give him a little credit. His pass rushing wasn't terrible. He was 19th on pass rush win rate for defensive tackles, but he was a no-show in the run game. Um, let's see. I'm worried about the safeties, man. They're slow, really slow. They're slow to trigger. They were slow in coverage, getting back and giving help. Even the last play of the game, really slow getting over and helping Ingram in coverage, even though they had plenty of time. Kyler was looking there the whole way. Um, Dorian as a spy was a failed experiment. That's what we were doing in the first half. We were spying Kyler, and he was picking the wrong gaps. He was getting too close to the line of scrimmage. He was getting lost in there. So I didn't like that. And I didn't like the contain rush plan in the first half versus Kyler. You got to collapse the pocket and get Kyler, some pressure on him. And it was a nice adjustment to see in the second half. But as far as bad, I did not like the rush plan in the first half. You have anything else for bad on defense?
Yes, I do. But first of all, let's go to the good very quick on defense.
Okay.
Von Miller with the sack. You
Yeah,
want to talk
and
about things that was nice to see?
well, not even just the sack. So he was 11th in pass rush win rate.
Yeah,
So
he looked really good.
that's great to see. And then his run defense was really good. Jordan, I don't know if you knew this, but he played the majority of last year, and most games he threw a shutout. And like not even just like tackles, like pressures, like hurries, like
Like none.
he was doing nothing. So to see him do something is super encouraging. And I know the Cardinals, whatever, but their O line's not bad. It's really not. It's probably middle of the pack or even maybe top
Yeah.
15. Like it's pretty solid. So that was really really nice to see. That's a good call out.
And then to the bad, of course, I'm gonna go with Osiris Torrance. He had a few flags called on him throughout the game. For I know one for the face mask. He had like two for holding. We can't have that, especially at home.
Yeah,
Like the
no,
announcers were saying, we're the veteran team.
yeah, there was some confusion. It seemed like between him and McGovern on some of
Yes.
the odd man front looks, and when they brought some extra guys, it looked like he went to give help to McGovern, even though he was supposed to stay. So yeah, that's something they definitely need to clean up. Um, his run blocking was pretty good, and his pass blocking was not that bad, but there was those where you can't just leave a free rusher on the inside like that. Like
You can't.
that is a big no no. So that's definitely something they got to clean up.
And then also, looking at the run defense in the first half, especially on third down. In the first half, I mean, the
Yeah.
Bills defense could not get off the field. Look,
I
on
have that
third
as a
down,
bad in general. It's just third down in general.
yeah, third down, and that was one of our key blueprints of victories last week was get off the field on third down,
Yeah.
which they didn't do. And then my last one will be the rap casualty.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He's definitely has a reputation for coming in hot and blowing his own teammates up and
Friendly
trying to make
fire.
tackles. But this one, I didn't think it was egregious or anything. He was going in and trying to make a tackle, and Terran's arm just happened to be there. But yeah, it's never good to see, right? Um, some good on D. I thought the back five coverage was really good. I know I said the safeties were slow, but overall, I think they only had about two coverages that might have been blown or late. Rapp had one on McBride, and then Demar had the one on Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, MHJ in the fourth.
But he was there, and then Kyler looked the other way, and then he kind of tailed off. So I think they'll clean that up. But the back five was fantastic. Benford and Douglas, they only allowed 2 receptions for 4 yards. They were fantastic, and the Cardinals have really good weapons.
Yeah, they do.
Marvin Harrison Jr., Dortch, and Wilson ranked 57th, 65th, and 66th in man coverage separation. And in zone coverage separation, they were 42nd, 56th, and 67th. So I thought they did really good, even if Kyler wasn't throwing it to them. They weren't open. So that was really nice. I had Groot, obviously, as another good thing on defense.
Yes.
He continued where he left off in preseason. Man, when he's healthy, he's going to be a top 15, top 10 edge pass rusher. He's already a top 5, arguably, run defender.
Yeah.
So he was unbelievable. Hopefully that continues. And then I really liked Babbich's second half adjustments. I don't know if it was McDermott or Babbich, whatever, but they had really good adjustments. The Cardinals did nothing in the second half. They had 80 yards in the second half, and a lot of that was, the late, drive. So I thought that was some really nice adjustments. And they completely changed their game plan for Kyler. So that was really good to see because we haven't really seen some major schematic adjustments like that previously with this
In
defense.
quite some time. Yeah, it was nice. It was very nice to see.
Well, that wraps it up for me for the Bills Cardinals game. Jordan, you want to touch on the Dolphins Jags game?
Yeah, absolutely, I will. But two quick notes that I made while you guys were talking. First of all, I forgot that I missed the hell out of Mac Hollins.
Yeah.
I love that guy when he was a Dolphin.
Yes.
And a lot of Dolphin fans were upset when you guys got Trent Sherfield last year. Right. I wasn't as upset. I thought he was a good player. He had the one really good play against San Francisco for us in what ended up being the Brock Purdy game. That was the game that Garoppolo got hurt. But outside of that, I thought that Sherfield was underwhelming here. Mac Hollins is a guy from a special teams aspect. Yeah, he's one of the best receivers from a special teams standpoint. Yep. And second of all, he is a physical guy that I think is super underrated. And I feel like every stop he's made along the way in his career, people leave going, wow, I feel like we should have used him a little more at receiver. So I was definitely really unhappy. And second of all, just a note for Pat. Pat, you guys got to learn as you move on. If there's a question that you know the answer to, make sure you go first. If there's something you don't know the answer to, make sure Jake goes first, and then you could just be like, "Oh, you took everything I was gonna say," and you could move on from there and use him as an excuse. But I learned that right away with Brett. If there's something that I want to say, I know he's gonna take it, so I make sure that I get myself in there first and take that away from him, so I can steal that thunder.
Perfect. Yeah, don't be afraid to interject.
Yeah, no. So I'll go the good on offense for the Dolphins. I think when you're talking about the Miami Dolphins, especially from the Miami Dolphins fan perspective, the very first thing that any Dolphins fan is going to bring up is the offensive line. And the two highest rated players for the Dolphins in the game on Sunday against the Jaguars was Teron Armstead and Austin Jackson. Now, I'm not sure how many games Teron Armstead is going to give us this season, but when he's in, he is very, very effective. And he showed on Sunday he's still playing at a very high level. Austin Jackson on the other side did a great job, and I think really excels in the run game, especially on those outside runs to the right side, where he's paired in with the next guy that I'm going to get to here is Liam Eichenberg. Now, I am one of the main haters of Liam Eichenberg. I think that the numbers he was given And the accolades he was given after week 1 are a little overblown. I think there were definitely a couple plays that I noticed throughout the game that he really struggled. And when Liam Eichenberg makes a mistake, it's a bad mistake. But there were a couple plays, especially the Achane touchdown, where he did a lot to get on the outside and help in the run offense. And I think that that's going to be, if he's staying in that right guard position, which a lot of offensive line people that have come on our show have said, just put him at right guard, never let him play center, never let him play left guard.
Please put him back at center, please.
As long as
Liam at least for Thursday.
Guard.
Yeah, right.
Hey, no, and speaking of the center position, one of the things I was the happiest about, and when I actually wrote my recap of the game, the very first thing I listed was how happy I was with Aaron Brewer.
Yeah, he's found home, man. He's really good.
Yeah, and he's athletic, and he gets out there, and he seems like the perfect center for this offense. A lot in the same way. He's not that much of a different player. He's different, but in a similar way that Connor Williams was for us when he played really well. I think Aaron Brewer is a guy that, as long as he stays healthy, he's not going to have many snapping issues, and he's going to help a lot in the run offense. The pass pro issues have been there. He was rated as a really low guy in pass pro in the past. But this week he played well. I think a lot of the pressure that the Dolphins received came from the guard positions, specifically Robert Jones. But I saw multiple plays on film, especially watching the All-22, where Aaron Brewer really excelled. The next thing I have on the good on O list, the Dolphins didn't turn the ball over. And to me, in this league, not turning the ball over is a win, period.
Yeah, for sure.
And to me, which Tua, a lot like Josh Allen, although Tua has a lot less turnovers, he always has 1 or 2 plays a game where you're like, what's he do? Like, what did he see there? What is he looking at? And I didn't really see a play like that in this game. Something we'll talk about on the bad on O side is the run game, because they really didn't get the run game going. But what I liked is their usage of Devon Achane as a wide receiver. It was a big question mark as to who we were going to use really as that receiver 3, especially until Odell came back. And it seems like that answer is Devon Achane. And there were rumblings in camp that they may use him in that spot. But it was interesting to actually see it in action. It also allowed, because we have such a deep running back room, us to get 2 running backs on the field for formations. I think that you were setting up a little bit. I'd be interested to see if a week like this against Buffalo, they run a couple jet sweeps like that, and they had Achane coming in motion almost into a pass play or into something else. I could see them setting up for that jet sweep, and I could set them setting up for Achane almost in that Tyreek Hill, what they call the sharp formation last year, where he gets underneath, duck behind the tackle, and motions out. That's something I see as the next step of development for Devon Achane. The last 2, I'll name 2 of the tight ends here, Jonnu Smith and Julian Hill. Julian Hill rated as our highest rated player from a run blocking standpoint, which I thought was a role that more so Durham Smythe was going to play. Durham Smythe had a horrible week 1. It is definitely a week 1 that he's going to wish he got back. But Julian Hill capitalized on that opportunity.
He had a bad drop, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He had a bad everything. And I think that Julian Hill, who's a guy that a lot of Dolphin fans saw as being able to take that next step, he's a guy that made the team over Elijah Higgins last year, who was a guy that the Dolphins drafted. So to see Julian Hill really step up from a blocking perspective, where Jonnu Smith was also helping in the blocking game, but gave the Dolphins more of a receiving threat from the tight end position that we had last year. The last thing, which is the biggest thing for me, I'm a smash mouth kind of guy. And finally, for the first time in as long and as many regimes as I can remember, the Dolphins were not getting cute towards the end of the game on 3rd and 1. It was line up in a heavy formation. They gave the ball to Alec Ingold on 1, and really created that space that was needed to get that first down, and actually did it twice throughout the game. And in years past, they tried to run some sort of motion, some sort of screen, some sort of trick. And this year it was let's line up heavy and just not be cute. And one of the things that I was looking for in the Dolphins this season that I thought was going to be, are they going to take the next step going forward, is those what I like to call big boy plays. How are they going to be grown men, or are they going to get pushed around? And one of the things I saw about the Dolphins that I really liked, especially down the stretch on both sides of the football, is it was grown man expletive, which I don't know if I can curse on here.
No, you're good. You're good.
It was grown man shit. That was what happened down the stretch for the Dolphins. And it was a very big breath of fresh air to see, because it's not what we've seen early in the tenure of Mike McDaniel, and it's also not what we've seen in the last couple generations of Miami Dolphins football. Brian Flores, and even before that, Adam Gase.
We don't say his name.
You can cut that. Adam Gase and guys like that. The bad on O is I'm still, although I talk highly about Liam Eichenberg, I'm still worried about the guard position. Robert Jones really struggled. Liam Eichenberg is Liam Eichenberg. And I'm worried about interior pressure. And if I'm playing against the Dolphins, and this is a little spoiler alert for later, the first thing I'm going to tell a team defensively is you can get pressure on Tua up the middle. Now, I think Tua is underrated as far as being able to move east and west and make a play, especially now he's lost about 15 pounds and looks more athletic. But he's always been able to get out of the pocket and make a throw. But if you can get to him inside early, that's a way to really disrupt things. And that's something that I'm definitely still worried about. Second is Mike McDaniel's play calling. Early, I believe it was like 6 of the first 7 plays were screens or something like that. I think it was a total of, and I might have saw this wrong, it was somewhere around 16 screens attempted in the game.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Which I think that part of that is, all right, let's spread them out a little bit and attack the middle, but we never attack the middle. And part of it is getting the ball to Tyreek, getting the ball to Achane, getting the ball to Waddle, even threw one to Jonnu Smith. We have a number of weapons that can create. And while I'd like to see it, I hope it's setting up what's going to happen this week and in the
I bet, because we're historically a bad screen defense team. So
yeah, we are.
And I would like to see those screens turn into screens with a wheel, turn into that more of an RPO game. And there were a couple plays that some people were putting out saying this was an RPO that Tua misread, and it just happened to be a play action where the play got blown up. But I do think that McDaniel's play calling left a lot to be desired. Now,
and that's been a concern, though, right? Like, especially like last year, right? Like even late in games, playoffs, like he's kind of gone away from things that were working. Like, isn't that like a standing concern?
He gets cute at times. He also struggled in the past to get the plays in quickly, which led to late play clock situations, Tua maybe not having enough time to read. That was definitely a concern. I always think that a head coach should have an offensive and a defensive coordinator. Yeah. Look, he's the head man. If he wants to trust himself to call plays.
There's a lot going on.
But there is a lot going on throughout the game. Yeah. And I think that at times, guys that call plays can kind of resort to that coordinator mentality. And it's something that I don't want to see from Mike McDaniel. But if this is something, I told Brett earlier tonight that I saw week 1 for the Dolphins almost as preseason game 4. I saw it as we're allowing our starters to play the full game, but we're still kind of feeling things out. I think that although, hey, we got the win, we're 1-0, I think it's a game that the Dolphins didn't look at and say, this is a game we have to win in the grand scheme of things. This is a chance for us to get everybody back in rhythm. It worked, but I also think that the play calling, a lot like preseason to week 1, usually is where you see things open up. I think week 1 to week 2 is where I'd really like to see things open up for the Dolphins and recognize things they do in week 2 that kind of are the next step of things they put on film in week 1. So I'm hoping that that's what it is from a McDaniel standpoint.
I do have a question for you on that same topic. Like, it looked like the Tyreek Hill touchdown after the Holland forced fumble.
Uh-huh.
It looked like that was built off of a concept that you guys were running earlier, and I wonder if he was like saving that or whatever. But it totally looked like one of the pull, left side runs, and it sucked up the safety, and then just let Tyreek, open in space, right? Just run into space. But I kind of feel like I'm wondering if that's what he was doing, and then you guys were losing and you needed to have a big
Yeah.
play, and so he pulled that one out. But yeah, that's a great point. Maybe he was just setting up a lot of stuff, a lot of tendencies, for this matchup or going forward.
And there are always going to be things that you kind of keep in your back pocket,
Right.
even for later in the season.
Right.
But I think that they tried to keep it as close to the chest as possible because week 2 is such a big game.
Yeah.
So we'll see kind of how, if that's a trend or if that's something they can build on. The wide receiver 3 position, the fact that it is Devon Achane, although it's great for Achane and it's a nice little gadget, I kind of was hoping for something more out of that wide receiver 3 spot. Obviously, Odell's not back yet. Malik Washington didn't play in week 1. So one of those guys are usually going to be that receiver 3. But outside of just a few plays, not only was there no real wide receiver 3, but we had the inability to separate from defensive backs. Guys were not really getting open. And I think it was more on the receivers themselves and less on Tua as a quarterback. Guys need to find a way to get open in this league. And they really struggled to do so, I thought, in week 1. So, yes, Tyreek is going to be Tyreek. Waddle is going to be Waddle. Achane, Mostert, they're going to figure it out in the backfield. Jalen Wright, Jeff Wilson, they're going to figure it out in the backfield. But I need to see somebody else in that receiver room step up in order for me to feel confident about this offense. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get to right before the trade deadline and one of the positions that you hear is that the Dolphins reach out to a couple teams about possibly getting a receiver that can come in and help. I know they were very high on Xavier Worthy in the draft. They just had Chop Robinson graded really high. And
God, can you imagine all that speed? Those
Yeah.
2 guys. Jeez.
Oh my goodness.
That's gross. So what do you think caused the run issues? Was it what Jacksonville was doing? Do you think it was rust? Week 1. What? Because you guys did not run the ball well at all.
Mostert got banged up early in the game, and Mostert really struggled. He looked like he was just starting to get back in the swing of things. Brett said he didn't want to speculate. It almost looked like he was out of shape. But it was just, he definitely almost didn't have his legs under him. And is definitely getting back.
Hey, he's getting old, man.
Speed. Jalen Wright was inactive. He's a guy that I think that in a normal week, if Mostert is having an early start like that, gets banged up, he's the guy that's going to take a lot of those Mostert plays. But when you look at the overall numbers, if you add Devon Achane's receiving stats to that rushing number, he had 7 catches for 76 yards. And
was it screens and stuff, or was he?
It was mostly screens. It was mostly underneath stuff.
Okay.
And so if you add that and he finishes with 17 carries for 100 yards, all of a sudden you feel a lot better about the run game.
Right.
So it's not something I'm overly concerned about.
Yeah.
I was happy to see from, and not a run game perspective, that Tua's mobility does look like it's better this year. So I think that that's something else as we go on that we'll see. But the run game is not something at all right now that I'm really concerned about. And even if we go into the Buffalo game, I see running the football as one of our keys. But even if running the football is not something we're doing at a very, very high level, it's not something I'm going to be concerned about because McDaniel has enough quick game stuff in his repertoire that he can still get those aspects of the run game out by doing other things.
Yeah, and it's about keeping the defense honest and running play action off of it, right? So
yeah, and Tua is a great play action quarterback
for sure. RPO for sure.
And the last one I'll go to there is the other tight end, Durham Smythe. He was a guy that was supposed to be, we have Jonnu Smith now, but he was supposed to be a guy that could be there for the majority of the snaps, and he had a horrendous football game. Like like we talked about the drop pass, the inability to block. He looked lost out there to the point where a guy like Tanner Connor, or a guy like Hayden Rucci, who are both around and have been around the team, give Durham Smythe a couple weeks like that moving forward with a cap hit the way he has. I could see him being a guy the Dolphins move in order to open up another couple $1 million to go get a player, because he was essentially that bad in week 1. And overall, it would be very easy for me to be caveman-like and be like, first half bad, second half good. Like, because that's what it came down to for the Dolphins.
Hey, that was us too. So
that was us too.
Everything was just the first half was rust, and the second half you kind of saw the energy getting picked back up. And that's kind of going to be the theme of when I talk about the defense. But the play calling, a little bit of the running stuff, and then the receiver 3, and then that pressure from the interior of the offensive line, especially from the guards. Those things have to be cleaned up if the Dolphins, like in your power rankings, go from being the number 5 or 4 team to getting into that top 3.
What formations are you guys typically running? Like, are you doing a lot of 2 tight end? I know Ingold gets in there a lot. So, and then you said the 2 backs. So, is there a lot of like 22 and 13 personnel and stuff like that?
There's a lot of heavier personnel, and I'm looking here so I can give you the exact numbers. I mean, Julian Hill, who's our backup tight end, played 42 of the 71 snaps.
Wow. And he's what? Tight end 3?
2.
Okay.
Well,
Jonnu, right? But
so Jonnu played 20.
Okay.
Julian Hill played 42. Durham Smythe played 30. Tanner Connor played 3. And we used Greg DeBose a little bit as a blocking guy kind of near the line. And he played another 13 snaps. So having guys in that could block in a lot of heavier formations. And
sounds like you need a Matt Collins.
I would love Matt Collins. Yeah, I think that the Dolphins are trying to get Wish.com version of him with Chase Claypool.
Oh man, Claypool, man.
Which you know all too well.
Yeah.
But I do miss a guy, and Dubose is supposed to be that guy that can get out there and do that. But a lot of heavier formations, and then a lot of movement off of those formations. We're not. I think if you didn't watch the Dolphins and you think about what we are, you would kind of think this spread, get the ball around, and we're not that at all.
Yeah, condensed formations
resembles a 49ers or a Rams a lot more than people think.
Yeah, in Detroit too. Yeah, condense the formation for sure. We're starting to run more of that too. So I think that's a lot of the league, right, is condensed formations, bigger personnel, and then run your action off of that for sure. All right, what about defense? I saw the Dolphins gave up the most explosive plays, or the highest explosive play rate in the NFL for week 1. And then I'm curious how the D-line played. You know, Jalen Phillips coming back. I heard he had a good game, and how the rest of them did.
So I'll start on the good side of the defense. And the first 3 words I listed there were energy, energy, and energy. The biggest difference from what I saw with the Dolphins as a team from last year to this year is the energy on the defensive side of the ball. Anthony Weaver has those guys flying around. If anybody listening does not know the name Anthony Weaver, he is going to be a head coach in this league. If not next season, the season after. He is a top-notch coordinator, and he knows how to get these guys to play for him. Not only that, but the adjustments he made from the first half to the second half. I would be willing to bet those explosive plays that gave us the number 1 explosive play rate, I would assume that most of those came in the first half. Because in the second half, that Dolphins defense, outside of really the drive where the Jaguars went down the field and Javon Holland forced that fumble to end the drive.
Hey, that turned the whole game, right?
Which people say, we're lucky the Jaguars fumbled. No, that was more of a forced fumble than a fumble.
He punched that out.
That was a touchdown. ETN loosened up a little bit, and Javon Holland saw an opportunity and punched that out.
The game was probably over if he doesn't do that, right? I mean,
and it's funny because Ghost of Adam Gase tweeted, and we've had Ghost on a couple times.
Okay.
And I know that Ghost is quite the character, but he posted a great video of that play because Dolphin fans were talking about why the hole opened up so big. And David Long actually got completely held and grabbed and pulled out of the play.
That's usually how big runs happen.
Yeah.
Right. And it was complete holding. And I commented on it and I said, if you think about it, if David Long either A, didn't get held, or B, the holding was called, the Dolphins probably don't win that game.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because if he does
right, the next play was the Tyreek Hill
Yes.
touchdown, right? Yeah.
which opened it up, and then the next play after that, the kickoff, the Jaguars fumbled, which the Dolphins didn't get it back, but it was a huge momentum shifting play. And just that swing, it was a 5-minute span of real time that completely changed really the way I'm talking to you guys right now, because it would probably be at a much different tone if that would have gone differently. But this is the NFL, and those are the difference between being happy and sad in this league.
Yeah.
I have 3 other points defensively from a good aspect. You mentioned the defensive line, and it's back to a term I said earlier, which is grown men. The Miami Dolphins, Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell, Deshaun Hand, Brandon Pilley. Benito Jones didn't have a good game, but those other guys, Sealer, Pilley, Hand, and Calais Campbell, all 4 of them had really good physical games. And if you go back to the Baltimore defense of last year, which Anthony Weaver and Mike McDonald coached, okay, you look at their defense, they weren't asking the 3 defensive linemen in their 3-4 defense to be stars. They weren't asking them to be what Christian Wilkins was for the Dolphins last year.
Right.
They're asking them to be physical, eat up your gaps, be big, and allow the speedy guys around you, the playmakers around you, to make plays and make tackles and have open lines of tackles. And the play of Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell, Brandon Pilley, and Deshaun Hand
so good.
is what allowed David Long and Jalen Phillips to be the 2 best players on the field. Because David Long put on an absolute masterclass outside of one play.
He can fly, man.
Where him and Jordan Brooks attacked the same exact gap. And we'll never know sitting here if it was David Long's fault or Jordan Brooks' fault. But David Long was the highest rated player on the Dolphins secondary and is an absolute leader of this defense. People told me when we signed him last year that he was an underrated signing. And even the word underrated is underrated for how good David Long has been. But Jalen Phillips was the best player on the football field on any of the sides of the ball in that game.
Which is crazy coming back from Achilles.
Yeah, coming back from the injury.
Achilles late in the season last year, and he's back making those plays. He only played 34 snaps.
Okay.
But I would say that out of those 34 snaps, he was in the backfield. I don't have the exact number, but I would be venturing to guess it was a very large amount of time.
Does he normally line up on one side, or does he switch sides?
He usually lines up on one side. He usually lines up on the left.
Okay. So that'll be going against Spencer Brown.
But it will be interesting to see. It's Anthony Weaver. We've only had one game under Anthony Weaver's
That's
defense.
true.
So it's going to be interesting to see.
Because that's definitely the guy you want going against whoever you think is weakest, right? Of the 2 tackles.
But he goes to the other side and has Deion Dawkins. So.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I think you would want to stay on Spencer Brown's side for sure. So.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, the defense played well. Again, there was so much energy, especially throughout that game, especially during points that it could have dipped, which is
How'd Poyer do?
Poyer was okay. He had a couple plays. He had a really bad play. I don't know if you saw it, where his thumb actually got.
Yeah, I saw that.
In
someone's helmet.
Of the other receiver.
Yeah.
From a numbers perspective, he was rated as the 3rd worst player on the Dolphins defense. I think a lot of that was from a coverage standpoint. When he played more in the box, when he had an opportunity to make a tackle, that's where he really excelled. So I think that as we go on, we'll see a little bit less of him in coverage and a little more of him kind of closer to the line of scrimmage.
Does he – so I know they like – I don't know about with Weaver, but with Holland is so good, man. And they like to bring him down as well and, get him blitzing and get him down there. So with Poyer, though, I don't I wouldn't want Poyer as the deep safety. Do you guys play like Brandon Jones or someone else as a deep safety if you're bringing
So
Holland down?
Javon Holland could play the deep safety position.
Right.
He's definitely a guy that can do both
But I
those
wouldn't want him
roles.
just sitting back there all the time, right?
No, but they will. And there was a play. It was a great play, and Brett actually talked about it on our episode where the Dolphins, they're going to do a lot of disguising under Anthony Weaver, especially, and they're going to send a lot of guys in different positions. They had a play that completely looked like cover zero, that it looked like they were selling out, and on the snap they rotated into a cover three, and it was a complete disguise that worked perfectly. And they had a missed tackle, which caused a not so big gain. But it was just the disguise. And I think that you're going to see Anthony Weaver ask a lot of different guys to do a lot of different things early in the season to see what works and what sticks and what guys can do. And then as you get later and later in the season, you'll kind of buckle down and put guys where they fit best. But for right now, Javon Holland is a guy that can play both roles. Elijah Campbell's a guy they like that can play both roles.
Ramsey's versatile too, right?
Brandon Jones actually signed with Denver.
Okay.
I would love to have him. I'm a big Brandon Jones guy.
Yeah, me too.
But I would love him on this team. But it's Javon Holland, Jordan Poyer, Marcus May, Elijah Campbell, and then they like Patrick McMorris, who we drafted in the 6th round.
Okay.
So between those 5 guys, it's a matter of who can play the deep spot, who can play up in the box, who can do both. And right now it's looking like Jordan Poyer is one of those guys that should just simply be in the box.
What about on the boundary? Ramsey, is he playing slot or outside or moving all over? Or
So this is the first time, at least because we had Fangio last year. Last year they stuck Ramsey on one side of the field. The corners played their sides. Sunday they moved around.
Okay.
Sunday he was moving around with different receivers, but depending on what they were playing, he was going to both sides of the field. I'm interested. Ramsey did struggle a little bit. He had a couple plays where he gave up some big plays. He had a couple other drives.
He's kind of always done that though. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of blown some plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to blow a couple, and he's going to have some that he looks great. You just hope he looks great more than he blows them.
For sure. Yep.
But I'm curious as to whether that's the new role of moving all around
Okay.
and getting used to it,
Yeah.
or if it's okay, he's taking a step back. On the other corner, that I'm sure, again, if you went to that number 1 explosive play rate, I'm sure a lot of it was on Kader Kohu.
We know him.
Struggled and struggling.
Is
and
he playing slot mostly?
He does play nickel mostly. And I think that we're a couple weeks away from Storm Duck, our undrafted free agent from Louisville. It's one of the best names in football.
Awesome.
But I think we're a couple weeks away from seeing Storm Duck fully overtake Kader Kohu kind of in that nickel spot, because Kader was horrible.
Which is, I mean, his rookie year, he was so good. And then I feel like he's just gotten worse since. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, for sure. He was really good his rookie year, and then was okay last year. And even in training camp, a lot of people thought he wasn't going to make this team.
Wow.
We had 3 corners, Jason Mitri, Isaiah Johnson, and Storm Duck, that all 3 of them as undrafted free agents, people thought they had a chance to make this team. And the guy, I think the next guy that would have been gone after Nick Needham, who we cut and brought back onto the practice squad, because in our mind, he's not fully healthy and really needs another year to get back from his injury, and hopefully can take that next step next year. But Kader Kohu is kind of on watch with a guy like Durham Smythe that, hey, we're expecting something of you here. You got to step it up a little bit. But Kader Kohu and Jalen Ramsey both, not as worried about Ramsey, but I'm definitely worried about Kader Kohu, which those are 2 of the 4 negatives I had. The other 2, one, although I thought Chop Robinson, for being a rookie that we kind of thought was even 6 weeks to a year away, his run defense was pretty atrocious.
Yeah.
I think that the Jaguars were playing well when they were simply waiting for him to bull rush and then just running through that gap right there. I think that was an area where Chop really struggled, and we'll look for him to not be as just uber aggressive and try to get back there. But his run defense really struggled. We definitely miss a guy like Bradley Chubb. When he comes back, it's going to make all the difference. And then just the run defense overall, but specifically against Tank Bigsby. Because I think when the speedier Travis Etienne, and Etienne can do it all, but he's a little more of a speedier back. When he was in the game, it seemed like the Dolphins defense played well. When they went to Tank Bigsby, who was playing an aggressive smash mouth style of football, that's when you saw the team start to struggle a little bit, which is worrisome going forward to see if we struggle against power backs of other teams. Because, again, late in the season, in cold weather, if you're up in Baltimore and can't stop Derrick Henry, if you're in KC and can't stop Isaiah Pacheco.
Even Houston now with Mixon.
Yeah, with Joe Mixon, yeah.
It's going to be a long day. So we'll see if that was an outlier. I know Doug Peterson was very high on Tank Bigsby going into the season. But we'll see if that was an outlier being week one or if the struggle against power backs continues. But overall, I think that it was a tale of two halves for the Dolphins, a lot like the Bills. And at the end of the game, at the end of the day, you just kind of have to take the good with the bad, be grateful you got to win, look at it like a last preseason game, and say we need to fix these things because we have a big game coming up Thursday night, as you know.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll get into that. I wanted to start with injuries. So we'll go for us first, and then you guys get any updates that you know of. So for us, Taron Johnson's going to be out. They might put him on IR. They're still trying to figure it out. It's TBD right now.
It is a forearm injury.
Yeah, forearm injury. Dwan Smoot's going to be out with his toe. I think that could be big because he was expected to take up a lot of snaps, probably get the third most DN snaps, really set the edge, and then let Vaughn kind of do more just pass rush stuff. Now, Vaughn looked really good in run defense, but I don't think they want to try to give him too many snaps just to, he's old and his health. So that was kind of big. And the guy who came in, Tuhill, was absolutely terrible. He only had like 10 or 11 snaps, but absolutely just not even worth having a defender out there. Like just
yes, you should heard Jake
let's have
Twitter
that
space.
guy out there more.
Right. So we'll see if he's active now. He does take some special team snaps, but Javon Solomon, who's their rookie edge, who they like, he was out with a oblique, I think, abdominal injury.
Yeah, oblique. Yes, it was an oblique.
We don't know if he's going to play. So he could take those snaps. And then they also have Kingsley Jonathan. I don't know if you remember him, but he's been on the team for a few years, kind of up and down from the practice squad. He could play special teams. So hopefully they call him up instead of Tuhill if both those guys can't go. Ty Johnson, our third running, well, really the second running back. He was the second one to come in, special teamer. He's having a sore knee. He's limited, so we'll see how much he can go. Our rookie, Ray Davis, for running back, he came in third and looked really good, had good run, good catch as well.
Yeah.
We really like him. He was really good in the preseason, so we would like to see him get more snaps. But
I have Ray Davis stashed on all of my keepers.
Smart.
Yeah.
I think throughout the year he's going to get more and more share, and even a game like this, like you said, where you want a guy who can run between the tackles, a little more power, I think that's right up Ray Davis's alley. So we'll see. I'm hoping he gets more action, but maybe with Ty Johnson, he definitely will. If Ty Johnson can't go, I'm not sure because Darrington Evans is still out. It would probably be like
Frank
Gore
Jr.?
Jr. But again, he doesn't really do special teams, so he would just be like your third running back, which would then force Ray Davis to get more carries. So I'm looking at that as kind of a positive, and that's not really a knock on Ty Johnson, but if he's not fully healthy, I'd rather have Ray Davis. That's really it. I mean, we have Josh Allen, left hand.
His left hand.
No one knows the extent of it. I'm guessing nothing's broken. But
he was cleared to practice yesterday and will.
He was cleared to practice and play. He practiced with a glove with some padding in there. So it looks like two of his fingers were taped together. I think it was his middle finger and his ring finger. So I'm not sure if it's just swollen or what. what. It didn't look like he jammed anything. It looked like his elbow landed on his hand. But we'll definitely watch out for that. Like, does that make them take less under center snaps? How does that affect handing the ball off to the left side, using that left hand? Ball security issues, right grip. Are you going to see way more pistol or play action? So those are all things that we're unsure of, and we'll see. But he's definitely going to play, and he's a gamer, so we'll see. What do you got for the Dolphins?
So first of all, I think that, and this is a PSA to Josh Allen, feel free to sit this one out. It's not that serious, man.
Yeah.
I don't want something further to happen to your hand.
That's really considerate of you.
But as a concerned
It's really nice of
citizen, I feel like sitting this one out maybe for the best. But
How about Mike White revenge game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
As far as injuries are concerned, I think there are only two that are really up in the air for the Dolphins. I think Malik Washington is still a week away. He has a quad injury. He didn't practice on Monday. And so I think that's still a question. I think the other four that are on the injury report, Liam Eichenberg, Jalen Phillips, Jalen Ramsey, and David Long. Jalen Phillips and Jalen Ramsey, I think, is just veteran rest.
Yeah.
Throughout McDaniel's tenure, they do this. Veterans there'll be a couple days where they don't practice. I think all those guys suit up and are fine. The two that are a question mark are the two running backs, Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. Now, as I said earlier, the Dolphins' offense is a lot like San Francisco's, is a lot like the Rams, to where that running back position is plug and play. I don't see a giant drop-off from Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, Jalen Wright. Now, there's a bigger drop-off, in my opinion, to Jeff Wilson, but Jeff Wilson has put up some good numbers and started a good amount of NFL games.
Yeah, so, coming in for Mostert, right, in San Francisco.
Exactly. So I don't think if Mostert and Achane were to sit, I expect one of them to play. I don't know which it's going to be. If I had to guess, I'd say Mostert doesn't play and Achane plays. That's, again, just a complete guess. But I think that this is a game where people learn who Jalen Wright is. The story I love to tell, I'm a little biased towards Jalen Wright because every year I create a Madden franchise and I pick a random team. And the team I ended up getting this year or last year was the Colts. And after year one, you do the draft and you can import draft players. And I actually got Jalen Wright in the 4th round in my Colts franchise a year ago. And for 3 years, I led the league in rushing with Jalen Wright. So I was going into this draft process like, oh, I like this Jalen Wright guy. And then he ends up on the Dolphins, and here we are. And I'm
the match made, right?
Jalen Wright fan that exists.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. I did not like that draft pick, and I can't imagine him and Achane together for the next couple of years. That is gross.
And I think that's the plan. I think the plan is
and that's a good fit. That is speed for days, right? But different styles, and they both can catch.
They're both a fit for that offense.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that Achane, he will always, for his career, I think, be running back 1B of a committee, and that's not a bad thing because he might end up with more carries at the end of the day. I just think
it's kind of like Alvin Kamara, right? Like when they brought in the other backs to do more of the heavy load, right? But early especially, they want to get him the ball, right?
Yeah, and I think Jalen Wright's that type of guy. That if Mostert was to miss, can be that you call him 1A, but like he's not going to get as many touches. But he does a lot of the between the tackle stuff, and he does a lot of the one cut stuff. Where Achane does a lot more of the outside stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
do you think the ankle is it an ankle for Achane? Is that what
it is an ankle, but I think it is more so early season. If we were a must-win game late in the season, if this was a playoff game, I think they're all practicing.
Yeah, it's tough being Thursday, right? I mean,
short week.
You're obviously going to rest guys. You're not really going through a real practice anyway. It's walkthroughs, right? So
for sure. And look, in a practice like this, if he's in pads or in just uppers on the field or 10 feet away in the sidelines in a shirt, like doesn't make a huge difference. He's there. He's learning. They're installing the game plan. Tomorrow will be more of the walkthrough. So if he's nowhere to be seen tomorrow, then you'd obviously be worried. But even if he is just standing out there for a couple snaps tomorrow, I think they're full speed ahead on Thursday.
Okay. Do you think Eichenberg's injury is going to limit him at all?
No,
It's
I
like a
think
shoulder, right, or pec or something.
I think he's okay. I didn't even personally see when it happened in the game.
Okay, it
Um,
wasn't like an existing thing. It was in this game.
I believe so. I didn't see it
Okay.
before this. So, but I think he's fine. I think again,
Okay.
that's just he might have had a little tweak. He might have had a little
Right.
something. Let's throw him on there. Let's limit him. He didn't miss any time. He was just limited. So I think he's going to be okay, and all systems go on Thursday.
Okay.
I don't see any changes being made to the offensive line between now and then.
Okay. Sweet. All right, let's get into a little trench warfare. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, let's do it. While I'm pulling up, I do have a question for you, Jordan. If A-Chain is good to go, but his ankle injury, do you think he would still see reps at wide receiver?
Yes, because Malik Washington is out and because OBJ is out. And I don't think that they want to give a full load to Braxton Berrios yet. Just simply because he limits them in a lot of aspects of that pure speed. I wouldn't be surprised if Achane lines up at receiver but has less targets, and they just throw him out there or put him in motion almost as a little bit of a decoy and to keep the Bills defense honest. But I think that I think there's a better chance they sit him than playing him and playing it very safe with him. I think if they put him out there, they're going to be more confident in him being able to do the full scope of what they want him to do.
I'm really happy Malik Washington is not healthy and we don't have to see him twice because, man, is he electric and he fits so perfectly in that offense, man. Like get the ball in his hands and just let him go, man.
Yeah, he's definitely a perfect fit, especially in that slot.
Yeah,
with Tyreek and Waddle, and even in games that they miss, and now you leave him in the slot and plug a guy like OBJ on the outside.
That's a good point.
Lining up, let's say Waddle, OBJ, and Malik Washington still is not a terrible wide receiver trio.
No,
the problem the Dolphins had, especially. And the play I think back to is week 17 or week 18 against the Bills at home last season. That play at the end of the game where Tua threw the pick that was intended for Chase Claypool.
What a bad route, man.
Tyreek wasn't even on the field.
Yeah.
So, and there were a lot of plays throughout the later part of the season where when they would pull Tyreek or Waddle off the field, they would almost be forced to run the ball because they didn't even have anybody out there that could get some separation and make a play. So I think when you start looking at Odell, you start looking at Malik Washington, they will make those plays where one of Tyreek and Waddle, who aren't going to play 100% of your offensive snaps, they need their guys. You put them in for a couple snaps, you take them out for a snap. Put them in for a couple, take them out. Having other guys there that can do things at the wide receiver position is only going to help the Dolphins, especially down the stretch of the season.
Well, that's a great point from last year, where it was the campaign to get Tyreek his 2,000, right? Like, I think they learned from that, right? He was just getting used and abused, and definitely wore down at the end. So I think having another guy like Malik, who's a weapon, would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Pat.
All right, yeah. Here's the first trench warfare. We have the Miami Dolphins offensive line and the Buffalo Bills defensive line.
All right, so we're each going to give a matchup on either side of the ball. Pat, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm looking at Ed Oliver versus Eichenberg.
Okay. I'll go the opposite side then, and I'll go Daquan versus Jones and Brewer, because he's probably going to face both of them.
And I think that you guys took kind of the easy because like I said, it's all today, and I wrote down if the Bills will win if. And one of those things is their defensive tackles get pressure on the interior of the Dolphins' offensive line. So I think that Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, but because I'm good at this, I'm going to spin off that and say, can Epinesa, can Greg Russo get any pressure on Austin Jackson, Teron Armstead, who had great game ones against a really good Jacksonville pass rush?
Yeah.
Or do those outside guys? Greg Russo had 3 sacks in week 1.
Yep.
Is that more so the Arizona offensive line? Can somebody like Armstead hold him in check?
No, that's a great point. I think one of those guys need to, whether it's Vaughn too. But yeah, the pass rush early has got to get to Tua. But we all
Right,
know
especially
you
from
give
the
him
interior.
time. Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I think both keys for us is interior pressure, because we know from facing Tua previously, you get some pressure in his face and it completely changes everything. With most quarterbacks, right?
Yes.
But Tua specifically.
That's
Being a shorter quarterback too, I think you get pressure up the middle, and it's harder for them to see, what's going on as well. So, what about flip side? You got the other.
Yes, I do.
Jordan, you want to go first since we stole yours?
Oh, how nice of you guys. I'm interested to see, kind of along the same token. It's funny because I wanted to pick the interior of the Bills' defensive line against the interior of the Dolphins' offensive line, but the outside linebackers here are actually strength versus strength. You discussed which side Phillips is going to line up on, which tackle they're going to put him against. I'm interested to see Phillips, Emmanuel Ogbah, Chop Robinson, Mo Kamara. Can they get pressure against the good tackles of the Bills? And if they can get good pressure, I mean, we'll talk about the interior, but can they contain Josh Allen and not let him just escape around and run around and do whatever he wants?
That's a great point for sure.
Very good point.
You got one there, Pat?
Yes, I do. I'm looking at David Edwards versus Sealer.
It's a good one, and he was fantastic. David Edwards was in week 1.
Yes, he was.
I think that's key, that interior pressure. I mean, I'll go the other side. I think Torrance versus Campbell or Jones. I think, like we said, any quarterback, that interior pressure is huge when it gets there fast.
Right.
So if we can limit that, I think that'll be a monster. I do worry a little bit about the communication. That's a question for you, Jordan. How much did you guys run stunts and games on the interior in week 1?
There was a lot of it. There was a lot of disguise, like I was talking about earlier. And it kind of was more of a you got to figure out right away when the snap is made what the Dolphins are doing, because they're going to send you the same look and end up doing a couple different things with it. So I think this is a very interesting matchup to see kind of what the Dolphins do based off of what they did in week 1 and kind of how the Bills counter to it. I think we know what the initial punch is going to be, or we'll know right away. It's more about who can counter to whatever that initial punch is.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, like I said earlier, the Bills were the number 1 pass block win rate team. How much of that was the Cardinals? They did give up some pressures interior, and that was off of stunts and games and odd fronts and simulated pressures. Definitely, there was a little confusion. So I think if Miami's gonna succeed, it's gonna be doing that.
Moving
Pat,
on
you
to
want
the
to go?
mismatch meter.
Yep, you want to go back to us, and we'll talk about the skill
Yes.
position mismatches. Um,
Yes.
all right, I'll lead it off with our offense versus the Dolphins defense. I got our running backs versus the linebackers and safeties in coverage. So getting Cook, Davis, Ty Johnson out in space and making David Long and Poyer and whoever else Holland in coverage. I think the Bills running backs are very good pass catchers and very fast, and getting them out in space is going to be key. And I think that's kind of a spot where the Dolphins can be taken advantage of a little bit, and not necessarily on a play to play basis, but stretching the Dolphins out more horizontally, I think, is something the Bills want to do, and then that'll lead to going more vertical.
Pat?
Hey, Jordan. Yeah, do you want to go, Jordan?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. Am I staying on the Bills offense, Dolphins defense?
Yeah, we'll do that first.
I think that an area that the Bills can really exploit the Dolphins is whoever is going to line up in slot for the Bills against Cater Kohu. Moving that guy around, getting that guy in action. Deep comebacks work really well against Cater Kohu. So whoever that is in the slot, I'm going against Kohu. I think that is the advantage that I'd want to see from Buffalo.
Does
If
he
I am
cover tight ends ever that are split out wide, or does that more Holland or someone else?
He will, but that would be more so either the safety or even a linebacker, depending on the way they're playing.
Okay, because they like to split Kincaid out a lot as well.
You'll be able to see really early on. I think the Dolphins will give it a couple different looks, especially the early drives, and kind of see what's effective. But I personally wouldn't want Cater Kohu anywhere near Dalton Kincaid.
Did you guys run a lot of man versus zone against Jacksonville?
It looked like more man to me, but there was a decent amount of mixing it up in there.
Yeah. Okay. Pat, what do you got?
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go with Josh Allen's legs versus Miami's defense. We saw it throughout Josh Allen's whole career. In big moments he uses his legs against Miami. Look at back at week 18 on that third and 16. Picked up the first down, kept the clock rolling. So that's why I'm gonna go with Josh Allen using his legs. He always does it in crucial moments.
He's definitely killed Miami with them. I don't. We'll see how much the hand affects that. But yeah, it's definitely got to be a part of his game, right? That's what helps.
You would think.
Him for sure.
You would think.
All right. What about defense? We'll give you first, Jordan, to go Miami offense versus Bills defense.
I'm going to go a little bit on the same token that you, Jake, took when you talked about the Bills' advantage. I look at a guy like Devon Achane from a receiving perspective against that linebacker core of the Bills. When I look back, the very first thing that jumped off the screen about the Arizona box score was that if you took James Conner, Amari DeMarcado, and Trey Benson, they combined for 6 catches for 64 yards. And I trust Devon Achane receiving the ball a lot more than I trust those 3 guys. Devon Achane finished with 7 catches for 76 yards against Jacksonville. That's something that I look for, and more so out of the backfield than necessarily out wide. I look for, if Achane plays, him to have a big receiving game. If he doesn't play, I look for Jalen Wright to have a very big receiving game against the Bills.
That's where we would like to have Milano. That's normally
right. Yes,
his
Milano
role
would be nice, and even Taryn.
Yeah, Taryn too, for sure. All right, Pat, what do you got?
I'm gonna go with the Buffalo Bills defense against Miami's rushing attack, because if we cannot force Miami to be one-dimensional, it can be a long game for us defensively.
That's a good
so
point.
Forcing Miami to be one-dimensional is a key.
I will go with the low-hanging fruit and go with Dorian Williams on early passing down coverage. He is uber aggressive to stop the run. He is very susceptible to play action. And as much as Miami likes to run those slants behind the linebackers when they suck up, that has me worried because Dorian will definitely bite and step up. So I want to see Dorian stay disciplined and stay in his lanes. And that is something I will definitely be watching. Now we normally go to the blueprint to victory for the Bills. We'll let you, Jordan, also give your blueprint to victory for the Dolphins. So, Jordan, do you want to kick it off? And what do you think would be the keys for a Dolphins victory?
So, like I told you, I wrote down here before, the Dolphins win if, the Bills win if. And for the Dolphins win if, it's if they can run the ball is first. If they can run the ball, if they can get, obviously, Tyreek is going to get what Tyreek gets. Waddle is going to get what Waddle gets. There needs to be another guy. There needs to be somebody else that has an explosive game. In week 1, it was Achane. Achane's a little banged up. Will it be him or will it be somebody else? So Dolphins win if they run the ball. Dolphins also win if they can turn over Josh Allen. I think that it's one thing to stop them. I think stopping him helps. It's another thing if they can start turning him over. Yeah. We all know Josh Allen's injury prone. Turnover prone. Injury prone, step on his hand. If they can turn him over and really frustrate him, especially early in the game with some of those disguised blitzes, with some of those disguised coverages, I think that will be part of the blueprint to victory. And the last one is no costly mistakes. And that's very easy to say, but you look at a team like Jacksonville last week, they win without the ETN fumble. That to me is a costly mistake. Tua, throughout his career in games the Dolphins lose, it always seems like he has that one very costly mistake. You think about the screen to Tyreek against Kansas City overseas last year.
Yep.
You think about the bad throw, although it was a bad route to Claypool last year, it always seems like Tua has one play where you're like, wow, I don't know why he made that. I'm going to be honest. I look at this game. I see the Bills as a team that have a lot less talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, as they had when we played them last year. So I think personally that the Dolphins have an advantage in a lot of areas. And I think the team that has the best chance to beat the Dolphins on Thursday night is the Dolphins. So I think if we don't beat ourselves, if we don't make any big mistakes, if we play solid Mike McDaniel Tua football, I see that as a path to victory.
Okay. Pat, you got the defense, right?
Yes,
Right,
I
what
do.
you got?
Looking at last week against Arizona, the Bills' defense could not get off the field on third down, and Miami has a way better offense than Arizona. So my first key to victory is get off the field on third down. Don't let Tua and the Dolphins' offense stay on the field and continue their drives. My second key to victory is get Tua off his first read, as we saw the last few times we have played Miami. The Buffalo Bills defense has a lot of success when we manage to knock Tua off his first read, which comes with interior pressure.
That's great. I had that written down as well, as far as limit first down success as a defensive key, right? Like
Yeah.
make Miami earn it, second and long, third and long. I think that's where they have an advantage for sure. All right, offense, my blueprint to victories, like Jordan's, were no turnovers. I think if we can not give any short fields or give up points like we did last week or with the fumble in the red zone, I think that's going to be a big key. And then the other one on offense is more play action, more screens, which helps Josh keep patient, easy yards, easy plays. I think that's a huge key because traditionally we've been able to move the ball well against Miami. It's just limit the mistakes. So I think that's a big key. And then the other one I have, which might lead to a little bit of a tangent, is special teams. No special teams mistakes. Got to be clean. We're going on our second season of poor special teams, especially in critical moments. Last week, I don't know if you know, Jordan, we gave up a kick return touchdown into the wind. Bass kicked off and floated one up in the air. DJ Dallas was able to run full speed underneath it and take it back to the house. And then the next kickoff, we squibbed it out of bounds and gave the ball to 40. So you can't do that stuff. You can't give easy points. You can't give up short fields to Miami. So that's a big one for me. I want to see a bounce back game for the kick coverage units specifically. Before we get to predictions, I'd like to do a little betting since our sponsors BetUS with a couple player props. Jordan, I know we put you on the spot last minute, but we'll let you go first so that way we don't steal yours. What are some props you got for Thursday night?
So I'm a little handicapped here. I'm looking at BetUS, and they don't have rushing props for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, because they're not sure who's going to play.
Because they don't know who we're going to play.
Yeah, that's a good point.
However, what I will say is when those lines come out, when you figure out who you're going to take or who you have the opportunity to take based on who's playing, take whichever Dolphins running back. If Achane plays, it's Achane. If Achane doesn't play, it's Jalen Wright. Take their over for catches.
Okay.
I think, like I said, the Dolphins are going to have to throw the ball out of the backfield. So I think the over for catches, and then over, if you're going to bet, and this is a kind of a little tip for those that are going to bet Dolphins prop bets throughout the season, be careful betting rushing yards. Stick more to rushing plus receiving yards because Achane is going to get his. You just don't know whether it's going to be simply rushing or rushing plus receiving. And then the last one I'll give because it hit the first game, and I think it's going to be constant, is Tua's over rushing yards. Tua's over rushing yards in the last game was 3.5. And you're essentially banking that he's going to run one.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be one a game. I could see him finishing with 7 or 8, somewhere in there, which if it's at 3.5 or 4.5, that'll hit.
Those are great. I mean, definitely the Tua rushing one. We let Kyler definitely sneak out far too often.
Yeah, quite a few times.
And remember, bet US, use code DO.
Use code DO.
So Pat, you want to do yours?
Yeah, I have 2. I have Josh Allen at over 245.5 passing yards at 130. And then Josh Allen over 1.5 passing touchdowns as well at -110.
Those were both of mine, literally. Yeah, you did. I had over 2 touchdowns and over 250 as a parlay. I'll do a sneaky one. I like Ray Davis anytime touchdown plus 750.
Ooh, wow.
With Josh Allen's hand, I don't know how much they're going to want to let him run down there. I like Ray Davis in between the tackles. It's not really Cook's spot. And with Ty Johnson nicked up, I'm wondering if those carries go to Ray Davis. And then the other one I got is Ray Davis over receiving yards. Last week he hit it on 1 catch. It was really low. I'm guessing it's probably going to be low again. I think it was 12.5 last week. So I would look for that one as well. All right, gentlemen, it's time. Predictions.
Yes.
We will let the guest go first. I think we kind of know where you're leaning, but we'll let you go first.
Well, being that I said in the last segment that I'm pretty confident the Dolphins are the better football team. I think the Dolphins win. I think the Bills keep the game close. I think that every Dolphins-Bills game for the foreseeable future is going to be relatively close. I have the Dolphins winning 27-20. I think that it comes down to a late drive, and I think the Dolphins defense gets a stop on Josh Allen, which is something they weren't able to do towards the end of last season. I think Tua has a good game. I think we're able to run the ball. And again, I think the Dolphins win 27-20.
Awesome. All right, Pat,
Jake,
what do you got?
You want to go, Jake?
Sure, I'll go.
By the way, BetUS has listed it as plus 10,000 that one of you picked the Dolphins to win this game.
Wow, I like it. I believe it. So I was going back and forth, but I'll give a little numbers first. So the Bills have won 11 of the last 12 versus Miami. The score differential in those games are plus 174 for Buffalo. The Bills average over 33 points a game. The Dolphins average 24 a game. I went back and forth. Obviously, this could go any way. I think Thursday night games get a little crazy. I think that definitely throws a wrinkle into it. I think the early week matchup as well. You don't have a lot of tape on the new schemes. We have 2 new defensive coordinators. So I think that kind of throws some wrinkles in it as well. I do have the Bills winning, though, 33-30 in a shootout. I think in a Thursday night game as well, it's harder on the defense. So we'll see. Pat, what do you got?
Yeah, I do have Buffalo winning 31-24. I think it's a game where it's a brand new Buffalo Bills offense, and there's nothing to really go off of, and that's what's going to lead Buffalo to the victory. Just a new offensive scheme.
Sure, and I like I said, I could see it going either way. I think for Miami this year, they got to win this game, right? This is at home, interdivision. If they want to take the division, this is their chance to do it early, take the early lead. So I think it's monster for Miami. I think the pressure's more on them.
For sure.
And it's a night game too, so we'll see. Josh in Miami at night. You got to like your chances. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us.
Jordan, thank you.
Really, really appreciate it. One more time, you want to plug where people can find your work or maybe even highlight what you got coming up next?
Yeah, absolutely. First, my personal account is at Selly Sports, SELLY Sports. And then I'm part of the List Fins podcast. You can find us at the List Fins Pod on X. We have 5 guys that put in a lot of work to do what we do. I'm the one on here talking with you guys, but I can't be on here without my co-host Brett, without my 2 producers, Mr. S and Zach. without Donovan, who does a lot of our social media stuff. All 5 of us put a lot of work into this. We're now on season 2, and just simply to see how much this has grown, I give all the credit in the world to the 4 of them, and I'm just the one that gets to go on and talk about the Miami Dolphins, a team that I love. So again, follow me at Selly Sports, and follow us at The List Fins Pod. Starting week 3, because I have other prior commitments, we are going to start doing 2 episodes a week. One after the Dolphins game, which if the Dolphins play on Sunday at 1, the episode will be around 7 o'clock Sunday night, which will be a recap of whoever the Dolphins play that week, and then a lead up to the following game at some point during the week. So I'm appreciative of all the love. I'm appreciative of you guys having me on. If this was a Jets podcast, I probably would have said no. I can't look at the green for 2 hours.
Right.
But being that you guys are Buffalo fans, being that I've had a fair share of garbage plates in my time, I am a big fan of you guys. I'm glad you could bring me on. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks to all the
thank
viewers.
You, Jordan. I really appreciate it.
I think we have over 660 watching live on Twitter right now. So thank you guys so much. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us. I will do a plug for our post-game show. It'll be myself and Neffy from No One to Blame podcast. We'll be on live right after the game doing a post-game show for you Thursday night. And then for Pat and I, we will be back on Saturday night on our normal time, 9 Eastern, doing the Buffalo Blueprint. We'll recap the game as well. We'll also handicap some of Sunday's action. So please check us out. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys. Go Bills and Jordan.
Oh, and very quick.
Best of luck. Yeah, Pat, what do you got?
Next week, me and you will be doing a live show.
We will.
Right before the Jacksonville game.
We will. Good call.
Yes.
We will be live in Buffalo for that game, doing a show. So look out for that. And then we'll be doing a live post game after that as well. So thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate you tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
And thank you, Jordan.
Of course.